Okay, we are so close to launching this course. I cannot wait. I almost wish I didn't even have to do this video and I could just go straight to launch right now. But obviously, I need to give you all the information you need in order to make a proper decision about whether or not this course is the right one for you. A couple things, just sort of by way of recapping everything I've talked about so far. We're talking about doing the accounting of bookkeeping for property owners and flippers. I've talked to you probably ad nauseum about the opportunity. Firstly, about the fact that there's high demand and short supply of people who are not just willing, but actually qualified to be able to do this kind of bookkeeping. And the reason for that is not that, any of you watching this video are not smart enough. You definitely are, but it's just not the kind of thing you're likely to be able to figure out on your own. There's a lot of nuance to this. There's really two different kinds of business models grouped into one here, where we have the flippers and the construction, which is a very different kind of accounting and the way that works versus the rental property, the owners, right? So it's not that you're not smart enough. It's just, are you willing to put in the effort, a little bit of effort up front to learn something that most people aren't willing to put in the effort to learn so that you can be the very best that there is? As in other words, there are certain people I can think of, and I like to think that at some point, I was one of these people that if a lot of people, out there would talk to somebody who said, hey, you know what, I've got some rental properties and I'm buying some more that I may flip, I may rent, but I really need some help with the accounting, that, they're going to think of me and say, oh, you got to, Seth David specializes in that stuff. And I want you to be that person now who people are going to say that about, that they're going to say, hey, so-and-so specializes. That's the goal here. When you dive into a niche like this, really what you're hoping for is to become that person, that go-to person for anybody who needs accounting help in that exact, very specific industry. And that's one of the main benefits of choosing a niche instead of just being like a generalist, right? So the bottom line is, this is not rocket science. You can learn it. You just have to be willing to put in the effort. And I believe with a lot of confidence that if you put in the effort by taking this course, you'll have everything you need and beyond to be the best that you can be at serving this particular kind of client in this specific industry. For now, what I want to do is, first of all, I want to mention that among other things, which again, I'll go over in the next video, we're going to have 2 live Q&A sessions. And this is why, by the way, I do want to limit it somewhat to how many people get in. And I want to be honest with you. Most of the time with these launches that I've done, now that I've done a bunch of them, I always say the same thing, that I'm going to limit it to 100 to 150 people. The reality is, in most cases, I don't even come close to getting that many to sign up. I'd like to, it would be great, but I don't come close. The only reason I'm not sure that this is going to be the case here is this is a topic that has been requested of me for years. I mean, I can't tell you how many years back I can remember people emailing me, when are you going to do a course on property flippers and rental property owners? We did the property management one. That was a small course. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes, the distinction between that and what this course covers. But this is like probably the most requested course that I've ever had that I haven't done yet until now. So I don't know. The reality is, in my experience, the things that I think are going to do really well often don't. And then the things that I don't expect much of, all of a sudden, for whatever reason, takes off. So I've learned not to have too much of an expectation about this. But bottom line, on this one, we're going to have the 2 live Q&A. I want to make sure that I can handhold as many people as possible in this first round. After that, it's just going to be out there for people to sign up, and the recordings of the live Q&A will be available for people to watch. And we'll have the community in Slack, of course, where I can respond to questions. But again, it's not as close as having you in a Zoom with me where you can ask me your specific question and I can go through the answer with you. So I want to address now some of the questions I've been asked as I've been releasing these videos. I've been getting some questions, a couple on YouTube, a lot through email, and it's just more efficient for me to respond to them here in one video. Plus, I think there's probably a lot of people who have the same questions and just haven't taken the time to answer. So in the interest of efficiency, I saved some of the questions and I'm going to answer them here. So the first question, and this comes up for years, is how to do HUD-1 entries, right? So you get the HUD-1 or the closing disclosure statement or whatever they're using. Years ago it was supposed to switch to a closing disclosure statement, but I don't think that ever really took. I think we're back to like everybody's got a HUD-1 still. So does it cover that entries? Absolutely. In fact, the way the course is organized, the first section is just on getting QuickBooks Online set up. So you're not actually entering anything yet, but you need to have the right chart of accounts in place, the right items. I've mentioned I'm using account numbers, which I've never done before in my life, but I explain why I think it's necessary here. And in the second section, it's a whole flippers part. All right, so I started with the flippers, and the first thing I do is show you how to book the entry for the HUD-1 for the purchase of the property. And then I just walk through things sequentially, the same way it happens in the real world. Then we get into the construction pieces and how to record all the construction that you do on the property. And then, assuming you're now selling it, there's another lesson on how to enter the HUD-1 for the sale of the property. And of course, the other thing that's critical in that at that stage, which is calculating the gain or loss on your property. And along the way, I've got templates for all of this. So I've got templates where you can really plan it out so that before you go into QuickBooks, enter anything, boom, you're going to have everything laid out. So by the time you go into QuickBooks, you don't even have to think about it. You're basically just copying, pasting numbers, and you know exactly what to post, where to post it, and how to post it. The next question that comes up, and it came up with the property management, and in that course I was going to do a lesson on this, and then I pulled it out of the outline. And what I'm getting at is, does it cover vacation rentals? So there's not a lesson here on how to record vacation rentals, and I'll explain why. I do talk about it in one of the lessons. There is a lesson where I take a minute to talk about it, and I've written about it in the write-up. And the main reason for this is, with a vacation rental, you're not going to rely on having this much detail in QuickBooks Online. For vacation rentals, there are lots of vacation rental management apps out there. That's what you're going to use to track all the details of the vacation rental. Then in QuickBooks Online, it's going to be fairly simple. You're not going to track every person who rents the place out for a week at a time. You're going to have a generic customer for Vrbo or for Airbnb in QuickBooks Online, and you're just going to track the revenues that come in from each of those. Does it cover property management? The answer is no, because property management is a whole different ball of wax. If you're a property manager, it's kind of the opposite of this. You don't own the property now, you're managing it for somebody else. And so I have a whole course on property management which deals with that. The accounting is so different, and the quick contrast is with property management, everything's on the balance sheet because you're handling money that's not yours. Whereas here in this case, when we're doing the accounting, for the owner, everything's on the P&L because now we're dealing with the person whose money is being received and spent and so on. Now, the only caveat, and I don't have a lesson for this yet, but I will. I've got it kind of in the back of my mind to add a lesson for this probably sooner rather than later, is a lot of property owners will have a property management company. That property management company will give you a monthly statement showing all the rents they collected, all the expenses they paid, and how it all shakes out, how much money was left at the end of the day. And then, depending on what your arrangement is with the property management company, whether there was a disbursement of funds based on what was available at the end of the day. Now, in short, the way you're going to handle this as the property owner and doing that person's accounting is you're going to create a sort of fictitious bank account that's kind of in the name of the property management company that represents the funds of yours that they are holding on to and managing. So you can use that bank account to record the entries off of their monthly statement if you care to book all of that activity. Does this course teach how to invest in properties? Absolutely not. I am not qualified. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous. I mentioned in one of these videos that I am going to include a template as one of the bonuses that I've put together based on things that I've read and webinars that I've taken that will help you understand how these investors structure deals. But it would be irresponsible of me to go out there and claim to be able to tell you how to structure a deal and how to invest in a property. You'd all end up suing me and telling me that I made you lose all your money. What if my client starts off with a property that he or she wants to flip and then decides to keep it as a rental? I thought about this specifically. I have a lesson in here specifically. As I was mentioning earlier, the first section is set up, then we have the flippers, then we have the rental properties. And the first lesson in the rental property section deals with that scenario exactly. What if I had a property I was planning on flipping, but now I've decided to keep it and maintain it as a rental? And so that lesson specifically shows you how to do the conversion in the accounting, because it has to be moved from one part of the balance sheet to another, because as I mentioned, it's a different kind of accounting treatment for a property that you're going to rent versus one that you plan to flip. How do I track the properties? This comes up all the time. I see it, all the time in Facebook groups where people ask the question, and what they're really asking in most cases is, do I need to use customers to track the properties, or classes, or locations? And the answer is yes. You can use all of those things to track the properties. But the one thing I will tell you, and what I go over in this course exclusively because I want to keep it as simple as possible, especially for people starting out, is you have to use customers. at a minimum, you absolutely have to use customers and set up each property as a customer, because there's going to be the kinds of reporting you can get that way, plus other tracking mechanisms. For example, with a rental property, I need to be able to do an invoice so I can track who's paid rent and who hasn't, even if I'm not going to send those invoices out. So on the rental side, in that example, classes won't work, locations won't work. The only thing that will work well is using customers to track properties. And there's a lot of reasons and ways why it just makes sense to use customers for properties at a minimum as a starting point. If you want to, you can also introduce locations. There's benefits to that, and you can introduce classes. Those would be in addition to using customers as a tracking mechanism for properties. And finally, the last kind of question that I've gotten, I've gotten a bunch of questions worded differently, but they all basically amount to some version of each of these, is what about other property-related information? There's a lot of details to track about a property, like the leases and the leases that are signed, and yes, you can attach those to those same customers in QuickBooks Online for the tenants, and you'll see when you get into the course, we have a customer for the property, we have a sub-customer for each tenant. When the tenant moves out, those get made inactive, then we create a new one and call it vacant until it's filled. And anytime somebody moves in, we can attach the lease to that customer, and I recommend you do that. But would I want to rely on that solely as the one and permanent location for where I expect to have that document stored? The answer is no. I think this kind of a business model, like many, but this one especially, lends itself specifically to having some kind of a more robust system for tracking all of this sort of what I call accounting adjacent information. So things like maintenance records, we'll see it in the accounting when we've paid somebody, but what about what happens leading up to the point where we've paid a plumber to come in and do some repairs on the place? There's going to be a work order. We might even have a system where the tenants can request a work order and say, I have a plumbing problem in my apartment, and we need to, capture and track all that information. Now, as the bookkeeper serving the property owner, you may not be expected to track this, but many of your clients will ask you about tracking this, because what happens is a lot of times the accountant or bookkeeper is seen as the one very organized person in the whole mix from the perspective of the property owner. So they will almost naturally want to lean on you for help and information about how to track this kind of stuff. And it's your choice. You can say, no, it's out of my wheelhouse. I really just focus on the accounting and bookkeeping, or you can go the extra mile. And to that end, I've got a bonus, which it means that it's exclusive to people who sign up on this initial round, which is going to include a version of what I recently did called Bulletproof Notion, but specific to the property rental. So let me spend a couple minutes real quick just giving you a high-level look at what this looks like so you can see what I mean. And it's still in development, so this may not be 100% ready by the time we launch, but it will be ready shortly after that. My focus is on getting the videos and lessons done. But you'll see I've begun to build this out, and just real quick, this is what it's starting to sort of look like, where up here you'd have your properties, right? And I've got this sample property here with all the basic information. I can click in, and over here it gives me a pop out. I see all the basic information about this property. These are sampled numbers, so please don't go Googling any of this. I literally just made the numbers up. And over here is where you have a tenant. Notice the tenant is me in this case, and I'm a tenant of this property above. You can see that, so the stuff is linked. And a quick example of a plumbing maintenance request here, and you can see all the data. Again, I'm the tenant, you can see the address, the unit I'm in, and so on and so forth, right? Over here, you can hover your mouse over to see what question this is answering yes to, right? Permission to enter, urgency. And the other thing that's really cool about this that I'll show you real quick is I found this form builder app that integrates beautifully with Notion, and I've already developed the maintenance request form for this. So let me just go into this real quick, and I'll click share, and I'm just gonna launch this. And you can see how slick this is. This is integrated directly into that Notion database. So this is something you could send to your property owner client and say, hey, look, I can, offer this to you. Obviously, you'd charge them a fee for it because, you'd be managing it. And, once you get in here and get it set up and linked to your own Notion account, and yes, this requires that you have a Notion account if you want to use this part. But basically, you'll go through the different questions in the request, and all this just populates right back into a new maintenance request in Notion. It works beautifully. It is so slick. I can't tell you how excited I am just to be able to produce this, almost more excited than to teach you the accounting itself. So with that all in mind, that should answer hopefully all of your questions. Otherwise, I'm easy to find on social media. So reach out to me. Let me know what your questions are. I'll be happy to answer them. But here's the main thing. If you want to, get that unfair advantage that I reference in the title of this video, and if you're even wondering what that means, what it means is if I do get inundated with people wanting to sign up for this course to the point where I have more than 150 people, which I'll be honest, I don't think it's that likely, but if I do, I am going to want to limit it at some point, which means the best likelihood you have of ensuring that you get a spot in this first round where you'll get access to the bonuses like the live Q&A and other things that I'm going to explain, then make sure you're ready to hit the send receive button. The email is going to go out to the early bird waitlist only. So only people who have opted in for the early bird waitlist are going to get that email on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time. And that's when you'll get the email and you can click on the link to go right in and sign up for the course immediately. I can guarantee you a spot if you do that, because I'm sure I won't get 150 people that quickly. Then come Monday, the course gets announced to the rest of the world, and now anybody gets a chance to sign up. And then it's anybody's guess, like I said, because I can never tell after all the experiences that I've had launching quite a few courses at this point, I can never tell which one's going to do well and which one's not. So that's just me being completely honest and transparent with you, that I will limit it, but I don't expect it should be an issue, especially if you make sure that you sign up right away on Sunday. That's it. Good luck. I look forward to getting started. I can't wait to start this class and get you in the community and start getting going, getting you all set up to offer these services, doing accounting for property owners and flippers.